Just to give you an example, even today, most of the roles in the organizations, in our organization, we don't have job descriptions. We have what is the purpose of that role, what are the deliverables for the role, but no job descriptions, because we feel that job descriptions are often constraining. And if one has to, in our business, if one has to follow a job description, often that would not lead to the right outcome. So we don't have as a policy job descriptions for most of the roles that we have in the organization, and especially the critical roles. So technology, at one instance, has helped to remove and allow HR folks in the front line to spend their efforts in the places where they get the maximum bang for the buck. It has provided for the right kind of experience to our employees. And third is insights, providing us with the right insights for us to take decisions. How do we use data which comes up through technology to take the right kind of insights?
Hello and welcome to this brand new episode of our special interview series, HR Revolution Perspectives 2023 Experts Take, presented by People Matters in association with Darwinbox. I'm your host, Pallavi. Through this exclusive series, we will delve into conversations with top CHROs and thinking minds from the people and work landscape across Asia. The series builds on insights from the HR Revolution Perspectives 2023 Empower and Evolve Research Study, which is one of the largest workplace transformation studies in Asia. In today's episode, we have with us Joydeep Bose, Managing Director and Group CHRO, Olam International. Joydeep joined Olam in 2003, establishing the human resources function. Function has played a key role in the expansion of Olam from a privately held company with 2,500 employees to a publicly listed company with more than 40,000 employees. Prior to joining Olam, his experience has been in the chemical and technology industries, operating in more than 60 countries. And with this diverse team, Joydeep believes a culture that embeds inclusion and diversity will be the key factor in the success of future organizations. To navigate this conversation, we are being joined by Vikrant Khanna, Global Head, Value Management Advisory and Solutions, Darwinbox. Through his professional journey spanning a decade, Vikrant has multi-geographic experience spanning global and regional transformation, industry development and change management, and has worked across roles spanning business development, program management, and solution development. Vikrant is passionate about topics like the future of work, macro talent development, change as a critical capability, and the convergence of talent and technology. Thank you so much, Joydeep and Vikrant, for taking the time to be part of this series and agreeing to share your learnings with us.
Thanks, Pallavi.
Well, as I now hand over to Vikrant, it would be wonderful if you can give us a little context of the HR Revolution Perspectives 2023 Empower and Evolve Research Study and what it reflects about the trends that are shaping the talent landscape, which will then be followed by a conversation between you and Joydeep. So we are looking forward to an insightful discussion. With this, I hand it over to you, Vikrant.
Thank you so much, Pallavi. Joydeep, it's a pleasure to have you for this conversation. I've been an admirer of how Olam has grown and have been an avid follower of you as well. Really appreciate you making time for this conversation. HR Perspectives 2023 is a massive undertaking by Darwinbox and People Matters to address a void which exists within the corridor of Middle East, Southeast Asia, and India, if one thinks of it, where organizations are experiencing rapid growth. They have talent constraints, and technology is acting as a very big catalyst for them to scale programs, for them to drive productivity and the right kind of talent management so that they can continue on their growth trajectory. In our first edition, Joydeep, the study saw participation from about 1,200 organizations, cumulatively representing, I think if we think of the employment size, which is reflected by the participants, it's almost close to the population of Singapore, and the revenue size equal the GDP of Japan. Our intent of doing this study was to go deeper into how is the narrative of HR transformation changing for this market. This is a market that Darwinbox serves and is a key focus for Darwinbox. And People Matters as such was the perfect partner, because if we think of the community that People Matters has built, that community primarily is from the markets which are represented in our study. Are these findings relatable to global trends? I would say a lot of them are. Perhaps the growth story, not so much, because if one looks at the global landscape, we continue to see some mixed sentiments around growth. Nevertheless, as the first edition, it's already the largest of its kind if one looks at it from an Asia Pacific research lens. And through this conversation, Joydeep, we are furthering the research and living up to the name which we coined for this initiative, which is Perspectives, to have perspectives of CHROs from leading organizations such as you. Once again, thank you for making time for this conversation. To open up, Joydeep, Olam is a very well-known name within the region and globally. One of the canvas on which the study is anchored is that if one thinks of the leadership in organizations, if one thinks of the CXOs, there is a very strong intent of growth. We found that close to about 80% of our participants are looking at growing across their revenues, profitability, and if one scratches the surface, there are multiple strategies at play over here. There are strategies where organizations are going to pivot around inorganic expansion, and there are strategies where you're sweating out assets or investments which you've already made through better operational efficiencies. In this backdrop, particularly of interest was also the fact that investments when it comes to ESG will continue to rise. So if one looks at this finding and puts in your views on how Olam is experiencing it, Joydeep, what are some of the trends that you're seeing when it comes to growth and the changing drivers which it is leading for HR?
Vikram, first, thank you for having me here, and I'm very pleased to contribute to the body of knowledge and the talent and human capital areas. So thank you very much. Vikram, that was a very complex question that you asked me. So I'm not sure if trying to respond to it in a few minutes would do justice, but let me attempt it. And let me attempt it from Olam's perspective, our perspective, as you asked. So first, Olam, we are as of last year, we are in terms of our size, we are a 55 billion Sing dollar company. Our revenues are at 55 billion Sing dollars, which would be approximately 42 billion US. For the region that you did your study, perhaps a third of our business comes from this region. Most of our businesses, a third would be from Americas and Europe. Another third would be from Africa and South America. So approximately a third, as I mentioned, would be from this region, the region that you did your study and the region in question. Every business, and this is not just Olam, but every business, if you are in a business, your aim is to grow and grow profitably. Growing, it's not at the cost of profitably, but you would want to be profitable and you would want to grow. And this is what you owe to your shareholders, because you have to grow profitably. While every business is keen on growing profitably, when you look at history, there's a whole graveyard of companies who have been unable to do so. So when we are questioning and asking people whether they wish to grow, you'll obviously hear people wanting to grow and growing profitably. But not many people, not many businesses are successful at doing that on a consistent and a sustainable basis. So clearly, there are businesses, of course, who have been able to do it consistently over years, and there is a magic that they have, a portion that they have figured out, which enables them to do so. So that's just a view on businesses, their aspiration, and to what extent those aspirations actually get executed on, which, as you know, as people in the industry, as shareholders, not all businesses are successful. So what are those factors that help a business to be successful? And in this region, what are the trends that we see it? if I look at Olam and across our $55 billion of revenues, we are primarily into areas of food ingredients, and agri-commodities. So these are the broad areas that we are in. And this piece that this part of the business that we are in is subject to a huge amount of volatility. We do see volatility in every business, but particularly we believe in the food and agri business, volatility is even far more exaggerated because of climatic factors. Climate impacts us directly. And with the climate change happening, there's a lot of additional volatility that comes into our space, far beyond what most businesses deal with. And for us, a key part of being able to manage this volatility is the kind of leadership we have, the kind of talent that we have. And a large part of that talent that is required comes from experience. So we have to build our own talent pipeline so that it has the requisite experience and insights that they gather from that experience to deal with the volatility. So for us, it's incumbent on us, for us to be successful on a sustainable basis, we need to have a deep pipeline of talent who have seen our business, have grown within our business, and have been through some of these crucible experiences and know how to deal with them on a contingent basis. So that becomes very critical for us. So if there are other areas in this that you would want to dwell further, please you can go forward with them, and I'll try to respond to them.
Sure, Joydeep. And in fact, from that, I'll pick on what you said, that everyone wants to grow profitably, but not everyone grows profitably. So if we scratch the surface of this intention to growth, what we found in our research was that it's exposing a few key talent risks which organizations face. And one of them you've alluded to, which is, do we have the right capability for the critical roles which we need for executing on our strategies? Are we having a very solid leadership pipeline who can drive the business and navigate it through changes? And the other lens which was also coming through was the fact that if one looks at the environment today, environment is changing, and those ecosystem changes impact the ways in which organizations respond. For some, it could be, a far more rapid adoption of digital. For some, it could be, hedging against the volatility which, your business faces on a day-to-day basis, or it could be a combination of both. You alluded to the fact that you have to really focus on the internal talent pipeline. And, if I look at what I read about Olam, what I read about the culture at Olam, I think entrepreneurship is one of the bedrocks of how the organization has grown. Can you tell us a bit more about how are you succeeding in empowering your managers, your leaders, to really harness that entrepreneurial mindset? And how do you maintain that consistently over the years as Olam grows from strength to strength?
Right. I think you've touched on a very important topic for us here at Olam. We have grown over the last 30 years from a startup to where we are at over $50 billion in revenue. We have more than 40,000 employees across the organization, and they're spread across more than 60 countries as we speak. For us to manage this scale, it couldn't have been done just around a structure, a theoretical organization structure, and through oversights from that structure. The only way we could have grown to this scale is when we had leaders who acted as entrepreneurs for their businesses and their functions. And they literally owned their business, so they did what was right for the business instead of waiting for decisions to filter down from the top. So it was absolutely essential for us to have those kind of leaders in those key and critical roles who understood the business, who acted as owners and took the right decisions on their own and were empowered to do so. So right from the beginning, we created a structure where individuals could take those kind of decisions and were empowered and were allowed to take those decisions. Just to give you an example, even today, most of the roles in the our organization, we don't have job descriptions. We have what is the purpose of that role, what are the deliverables for the role, but no job descriptions, because we feel that job descriptions are often constraining. And if one has to, in our business, if one has to follow a job description, often that would not lead to the right outcome. So we don't have as a policy job descriptions for most of the roles that we have in the organization, and especially the critical roles. So coming back to what has helped us to create and sharpen this entrepreneurial culture, one is the way we have structured our organization, the way we have rewarded our team members. So right from the initial stages of creating our organization, we have allowed ownership with most of our employees, where they own shares. Even before we went public, we had key and critical managers owning parts of the company. We have a reward system has for many years in the past looked at matrices that captured entrepreneurial abilities, which was in terms of growth, in terms of new business, in terms of return measures on capital utilized and on risk capital utilized. So we would assign risk capital to critical business heads so that they could deliver on that risk capital. And they were rewarded basis how much they delivered on the risk capital. So it's through a combination of expectations, combination of rewarding the right individuals. And also the other thing that I've not touched on is our attitude towards failure. We have been through our quota of failures. I mean, you have to, as an organization which has sustained itself over years, we do have a quota of failures. It's how do we react to those failures? We have gone through instances where individuals, because of decisions that they have taken, they've incurred significant losses for the company, significant losses. Whereas in many other organizations, they would not have continued in their roles. For us, we believe that if they have got us into that problem, the kind of learning they would have had in that process would be best utilized if they were entrusted with the responsibility of solving that problem. So we continued with them and we supported them and had them address and get us out of the problem also. And many of our larger failures, we've had the same manager, the same leader, the same team that were entrusted with that initiative to continue and use those learnings to solve and address the problem too. So our whole attitude to failures has also helped us in our entrepreneurial journey. Now, when an entrepreneurial company, if it remains too entrepreneurial, it can be dysfunctional, because entrepreneurship, the common image that comes to one's mind is opening and starting new businesses. That's a sexy part of entrepreneurship. But businesses, to be successful, as we said earlier, we should be able to scale them up and scale them up profitably. So that is also for us a part of entrepreneurship. It is not just about starting a new business, how many new revenue sources that you could come up with, but also have you been, as a leader, been able to scale up businesses. And scaling up businesses is actually getting into the brick and mortar work of building an institution, getting the right culture in, getting the right talent in, setting up the right kind of processes and practices in the organization, and being process oriented. So often the two blocks of being entrepreneurial and being process oriented often don't go hand in hand. For us, it is also about, if you have to scale a business forward, you have to put in the right processes and ensure that those processes work without building in bureaucracy, and at the same time retaining the founder's mindset. So as a founder, we retain the founder's mindset, which is how do we continue to build new businesses and grow at the same time.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So these are opposites that we have to hold together and create the organization that is able to deal with these two opposites and build that capability of supporting them.
That's interesting, right? Because one would typically think that it's a dichotomy when it comes to entrepreneurship and processes. But the way you articulated how the both go hand in hand at Olam, I'm sure, I've taken a special note of it to quote elsewhere. The other thing which I took away was the attitude to failure. And again, if one resonates with, if I try to resonate it across my professional career as a consultant, as now someone who is in a tech firm driving a global team, it again kind of resonates very well because it puts in the notion of that you are trusting your employees to, number one, take those risks, and then secondly, should things go wrong, they need to feel the comfort that they are continued to be trusted for getting the organization out of that soup, or alternatively thinking of a solution to averse any future risk. That learning becomes really important. Now, Joydeep, it's great to hear about the story of entrepreneurship and the consistency with which it is maintained. As you do acquisitions and more organizations come under the Olam fold, how do you quickly make those organizations become and start working in the Olam way? Any secret sauce over there?
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant question. And we've had multiple acquisitions over the years. And just as a context, our industry, the food industry, typically grows globally, and we are present globally at half the average GDP growth across the world. So GDP grows at around 4%. So the food industry grows at around 2%. The commodity in the food industry grows around 2.5%, depending on what the growth. So it's not a fast growing. Unlike the tech industry, it's not an industry that is growing at an exponential pace. But within this industry, we've been growing at 3 to 4 times of the typical growth of this industry. So how do you get your growth happening? And so one, as you rightly said, it's organic and it's inorganic too, through acquisitions. Now, when we acquire companies, and we have acquired companies with deep legacy, they've been there for years together. Like the first acquisition was an Australian cotton company, which was a public sector organization. Then they listed themselves, but they still had the modus operandi of a public sector organization called Queensland Cotton. So and like that, we have acquired other organizations along the way, but they have grown at very mediocre growth rates. And then we suddenly bring them into our fold. And then when they do their planning, and then there's this whole expectation setting that happens where when in the past they've grown at 2%, and then we suddenly tell them that you have to grow at 8 to 10%. There's anything less than that wouldn't be accepted. So there is a shock. So we prepare them for the shock. And first thing is we retain the same leadership team. There've rarely been a case where we have changed leaders. So the same leadership team continues with that business. And most of our acquisitions have been on account of scope. So acquisitions typically happen either for scope or for scale, or a combination of both. If it's a combination, then it's a little diffused acquisition. You don't know why you're acquiring, but typically it's either scale or scope. So scale is where you're trying to reduce the costs of the new business that you're acquiring by integrating it into your organization. Scope is where you're getting a new set of customers, a new set of products, a new market that you're entering. And that is scope. Most of our acquisitions have been scope. Most. A few have been scale, but most have been scope. So when we go in for a scope related acquisition, we allow that company to retain its identity. We do not integrate it, or we do not on day one change all the all the banners and the signages, etc. We allow it to retain its identity. We just tell them that now you have another company which will help you to fund your growth, to support your growth. Come back with a growth plan. If you have been growing at 2%, come back with a plan which is 3 times that. And no constraints. Don't build in any constraints. So we encourage them to do so. So we plant some of our own managers who are from that business into that team, and they allow the team to think without boundaries. If you're working in this market and these are your strengths, where else with those same strengths can you operate? Can you increase your markets further? Can you grow beyond? And that's the way we have encouraged them, the same leadership teams, to think beyond and grow their businesses. I'll give you a specific example. Queensland Cotton was an acquisition that we did, I think, in 2007, one of the first large acquisitions we did. And they had a small acquired company in the US. Until then, we did not have a presence in the US. Through this acquisition, we had a very, very small company that was acquired by them earlier, and they had not integrated themselves, which was existing in the US. The leader of that team in the US, who was leading, and he still continues with the organization, he was running a very small business because by nature it was a small business in the US. So we spoke to him and we found out that he has significant understanding and insights into the ag space in the US, the agricultural space in the US. And we told him that if you have to grow this business multifold, how would you do it? So we said, and he said, does it have to be within the confines of cotton industry? He said, no, look beyond. So within the next few years, he came back with proposals of acquisitions in other areas. So we acquired a spices company. We set up an almonds company there, and then we acquired orchards and almonds in the almond space. And likewise, we grew US starting from that small base that we had, courtesy him in the initial stages. And today, a third of our revenues come from the US.
Wow.
If we had gone by the traditional route, the way acquisitions happen, we would have said, now you manage your businesses, get us profits from your business, do whatever, and don't look beyond your business. We would not have been able to build a base, and we would not have got the kind of insights that we could from that team there, who went beyond what their mandate was and their portfolio was, and helped us to build a solid base in the US today. So it's just an example of how you can drive that entrepreneurial culture even when you are pursuing an acquisitive strategy, where you're able to integrate your acquisitions into the culture of the company. And those very people, most of those leaders have continued and they have actually thrived in this organization. Today, they are better entrepreneurs than many of the older people in this, or the people who have been in this organization for longer periods of time. So I'm of the firm belief that people do change, even if they have not been accustomed to that environment. When you bring them in, and they see that it's in their best interest, their individual interests and the interests of their organization, they do change with the right kind of support.
It's interesting, while we are talking about business, I'll try to relate it with the study and how the narrative for transformation seems to be changing. So if one looks at the old ways of how acquisitions were done, you acquire, or even right now you acquire, and then you say that, okay, now you have your business, get me profits, which is, doing acquisitions for just that piece for which you've gone ahead and put in money. And if one contrasts it with what you're saying, it's about, setting growth expectations and not letting them have constraints so that they also start thinking like an entrepreneur. It's interesting because on that same narrative, if one thinks of how expectations from HR and expectations from transformation journeys in HR are changing, it's moving away from that inside view of, making HR more efficient, looking at cost reductions in HR, to actually going ahead and empowering the businesses, driving employee experience, becoming that force of change within the organization. So I can only, I can perhaps only imagine a fraction of how the HR function at Olam navigates through these complexities. So, if one now puts a lens on HR, Joydeep, how does the function reflect those same entrepreneurial spirits, process adherence, and at the same time, bears that mantle of building this culture consistently? What have been some of your learnings and successes there?
Interesting question, Vikrant. So I think right from the very first day in this organization, I was the first HR manager to join. And then subsequently, there's another colleague of mine, Shriram, who joined. And both of us were the first two managers to set up the HR function. The philosophy has been that the line managers, the operating managers, are the HR managers. Their job is HR. And professional HR team members who are a part of the HR function, they are there to enable and support them so that they can be the true HR managers. So that's been the philosophy of the organization right from day one. And this is a philosophy that a founder CEO also firmly believes in, saying that if the line managers, operating managers are accountable for their functions and businesses, they have to take accountability for their people and for their human capital. And HR will enable them, will create the right environment for them, provide them with the tools, but they have to deliver. And in being consistent with that philosophy, we have ensured that we've always have had a very, very lean HR function. Even today, we are probably one of the leanest for the 40,000 employees. We have not more than 250 or 260 HR team members across. So we still continue to be a very, very lean function. And that leanness itself, we see it as a factor that is able to deliver on our promise from HR. And then HR is involved in driving the vision around human capital also, along with the line managers, what direction that has to go. So that is one principle. There's the second principle that has been that for every dollar invested, whether through effort or through a regular investment, we have tried figuring out what is a value that is coming out of it. So we have been very value focused. As an organization, we've been value focused, and that has also crept into HR that for all the effort, for all the time that we spend, what is a value that is being perceived by our line managers and the rest of the organization. And that focus on value has helped us to get out of the stuff that is non-value adding immediately. And so therefore simplifying things, simplifying policies. As I mentioned, I mean, that's just an example. We never had a job description. We felt that the effort required in a job description wasn't worth that job description. So we never had it. So similarly, many of our policies today are not documented. It's a lot to do with your common sense. And use your common sense. If you were to do it the way you would want it, use your common sense and go about it. So we have very little documented policies. We're now getting into some documented policies, but right from the beginning, we really didn't have too many documented policies. So whatever was for the limited resources we had, we ensured that we were getting the best outcomes from those resources. So we had to consciously decide on transactions that we would not get involved in, that we will not do, even if that may come at a cost. If you don't do, so be it, because our resources can be better utilized elsewhere. And we actively got out of such work which we felt was not truly adding value. So there's part of seeing where is value getting added and how we can contribute to that value add has been another key philosophy of ours right from the beginning, right from day one. The third thing is that this company has been founded by employees. A CEO founded this company as a co-founder. He's an employee. He was a professional employee. So we have always been an employee-centric organization. Tough decisions on employees, we have not taken them easily. We do a lot of circumspection before we take a decision which can be tough on employees. whether it's a decision around compensation, a decision, even when we have had downturns, we have rarely succumbed to severances and layoffs. We typically don't do that. We have done it, not that we have not done it, but it comes with a lot of circumspection. So we have been an employee-centric organization. Before, when we take decisions which impact employees, the trend is to discuss those decisions with those employees that are being impacted, and then take a call, not an arbitrary call which comes suddenly and people don't know about it. So these are often discussed, and people are aware of it when a decision of this nature is taken. So we've been an employee-centric, and even though today we operate in geographies where this is not the norm, typically in the Western cultures where decisions are more taken more arbitrarily, more with a more sharper way, we are different. We don't do it in that manner. We take our time before we take these kind of decisions that impact people negatively. When we want to transfer someone to another place, it's a discussed, just as an example, if it's discussed with the individual, discussed with the family, and then the timelines are also agreed on that manner, so that it can, and then that all of these decisions happen through discussions. So that's the nature of and that has helped the organization retaining its employees. Our attrition is very low. It's one of the lowest, probably among similar companies and industries. So I don't know if I've touched on what you had asked, but I would say these are the three key things that have helped us to navigate from the day we started to where we are.
No, I think you've touched on it. You've not only touched on it, I think each and every one of those three elements which you spoke of are very meaningful. And, I'm sure we can have a conversation on each one of them for a day, if not more, on how you drive it. The one which I found of relevance and, of personal attachment, I've been a consultant. I've spent a lot of time helping organizations drive their HR transformation. The fact that the manager is the HR is such a difficult change to drive in any large scale transformation or organization change, if you think of it. And to have that already in place, I think it's a big force multiplier in many ways, because you can't have HR everywhere. And the fact that you run such an efficient team again speaks to it, on how this combination of almost saying that everyone is HR. If you're a manager, you're also responsible for people. It's a very powerful thought to take forward. Joydeep, I'm also cautious of time. I just want to touch upon one more question, right? As you scale, and if we combine everything that we spoke of, there are acquisitions which happen. There's the entrepreneurial mindset. There's the embedding of process. There is a value-driven HR organization which rests. What our study was also pointing towards was that organizations who are complementing all of this well with a thought-through technology strategy in HR kind of create a very strong binding force where, on one side, it gives the ability for HR to scale fast, to tailor programs fast. And on the other side, if one thinks of employee centricity, which is also one of the central pivots for your HR organization, it sort of bakes in that view that at all points in time, employees feel that they have the right kind of support, they have transparency, they have access, managers are invested. So, if one thinks of that glue, that role of a glue which technology plays, how is that shaping up at Olam? What are your thoughts over there?
Yeah, a very, very pertinent question there. So it is the backbone. Technology is the backbone. And let me support that through a couple of factors. So one, if HR has to remain lean, there are transactions. We can't just say that those transactions are not important. When a person is from joining till the person comes on board, onboarding gets completed, to KRAs and KPIs being assigned, reviews happening on time, then performance management happening, exercise happening, the compensation exercises happening, learning and development. So there are transactions, multiple transactions that are happening at each stage. How do we simplify that? For which there are two drivers. One is a shared services. So we have a shared services in out of India, an HR shared services. And HR shared services, they take up a huge load from frontline HR. And then they drive technology also. So there's a lot of technology at use today, which help in making this whole process seamless, and also providing the right kind of experience to our employees. So how do we provide the right kind of experience? So today we have the bots as usual, where any query, you can send the query out to the bot responds immediately, and people have got used to it. We have our automated surveys that come out at different lifestyle events, milestone events in an individual's life in the organization. The surveys then go and populate a dashboard, and then so that's also part of it. So technology at one instance has helped to remove and allow HR folks in the front line to spend their efforts and the places where they get the maximum bang for the buck. It has provided for the right kind of experience to our employees. And third is insights, providing us with the right insights for us to take decisions. How do we use data which comes up through technology to take the right kind of insights? So that is our attrition data, our dashboards, our analytics that we do, which sources of analytics are everyday data that gets generated from attendance, from other sources, plus our engagement surveys that we keep doing, the pulse surveys that we keep doing, the employee reactions that come in, learning data that comes in. So we have a team that looks at all this data and comes up with insights which help us to take decisions at various points. So technology is a backbone. Shared services is another area where they bring that expertise to deal with all these transactions in the right manner, and the analytics team that helps us to come up with insights that lead to better decisions being taken.
Understand. No, I think again very well put, because you're also thinking of having the right foundation in place so that HR has the time to focus on working very closely with businesses for the size, for the scale, or for experience. So it's very well put, and I think one of the few conversations where I've seen someone also stress on the importance of having shared services, because classically, if you think of that HR services role, you can eliminate the process handoffs which typically happen in that absence, and really have a frictionless view to how employees are experiencing their journey at Olam. So it was very interesting to hear your thoughts. Almost on time, Joydeep. For closing thoughts, I know you've been a huge you speak very passionately about how organizations will grow on the back of inclusivity, how organizations will grow on the back of embracing diversity. Any closing thoughts for our viewers? You've of course been through the research. You can talk about that. You can talk about your views on HR at Olam and how things will change over the coming 1 to 2 years. Closing remarks, Joel.
I think the field that we are in, human capital, it's a field where we are learning every day. And if we believe that what we know and what we have experienced is sufficient to deliver on the expectations of the future, we would be fooling ourselves. So for us, professionals who are showing the path in the human capital area, for us, the burden on us to keep learning every day and keeping us completely aware of the changes that are happening is absolutely essential. So I think the burden of learning, the burden of change is far higher in our area than even in in some of the tech areas that is happening that we believe is happening at a faster pace. So I think that's the learning and the insight that I have, and I would end with that actually.
That is profound, right? Learning every day. And the way you put it on the human capital space is also very interesting. It's been an area I've also given 20 years of my life to, so resonate completely. Pallavi, I'll hand over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Joydeep and Vikrant, for sharing those learnings and those insights with us. And for everyone who's watching this interview, thank you for tuning in. And if you've not yet got your copy of the HR Evolution Perspectives 2023 Empower and Evolve edition of the study, then you can just click on the link provided below this interview and download the copy now. If you want more details on how to automate day-to-day HR processes, steps to simplify human interactions, and getting actionable insights to build better workplaces, you can simply visit www.darwinbox.com. That's all in today's episode. Stay tuned as HR Evolution Perspectives 2023 Expert Take brings you another insightful discussion where we break down the important talent trends across India and APAC and deliberate solutions with the top talent leaders. Thank you so much and have a good day.